Okay, so if you've been using your phone as your main camera like most people do, then you're probably used to shooting everything in auto mode where everything is automatically set for you. And whenever you move over to a quote-unquote real camera, then you're probably still going to use auto mode, because for the most part, auto mode does a great job in balancing everything out for you to get a really good image. However, if you are going to be using cameras for the long term, eventually you're going to get into the whole world of shooting everything in manual, where you have full control of everything, but at the same time you're going to have to learn a lot of new skills. So right now I have everything in auto mode and everything should look really good and correct. But let me move over to manual mode to show you the difference. Okay, so now I've switched this over to manual mode, and you're probably thinking to yourself, what in the world happened? And I thought the same thing. I was actually shocked whenever I went over to manual mode, and I kind of thought my camera was broken, but that is not the case. This is where you have full control to manually set your exposure and many other settings on your camera, and this is the most important thing. However, this is also probably going to be the most challenging thing that you have to learn and constantly improve. Now, the whole idea of exposing your images and videos correctly can get really technical. And so I'm going to be going over like the general parts of this, and I'm going to show you how that works. So the first thing is your aperture, or more commonly known as the f-stop number. So in this case, it's kind of the opposite way. So the lower your f-stop number, the larger your aperture. And what an aperture is if you actually look at your lens, it opens and closes like your eyes, like the pupil of your eyes, where it lets more light in, and then it lets less light in whenever things are bright. So in this case, if I wanted to let less light in because there's way too much light in here, I'm actually going to increase my f-stop, which means that my aperture is not going to be as large, so it's going to let less light in. So the maximum aperture on this camera is 3.5, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the f-stop. And what you'll notice is, well, you kind of start seeing an image now. So the maximum f-stop on this, or the smallest aperture I could put on, is 22, so f22. And then the second setting is going to be your shutter speed. Just kind of think of it like blinds in front of your windows. And so whenever you put blinds in front of your windows, it blocks the light. And so the higher the shutter speed, the less light it comes in, because that whole window or the whole shutter is coming down a lot faster. So in this case, my shutter speed is currently at 13. So I'm going to increase that. And I am shooting this at 30 frames per second. So typically, to get the correct shutter speed, you're going to double that. So 30 frames per second, I have my shutter speed at 60. And now the image is really coming into play. And then the last major setting I have here is ISO. So that is your camera sensitivity to light. So right now I have my ISO at 1600. And so basically, if you actually have a high ISO number, it's more sensitive to light. So a lot of times, if you're in a dark environment, you could increase the ISO. The only drawback is it's going to add more noise because it's more sensitive to light, so it's adding light that's not really there, so it's artificial. And if you want the cleanest images, you're always going to go down to, basically the lowest ISO you could have without, underexposing or overexposing. And so in this case, it's going to be overexposing if it lets too much light in. And so the lower the ISO, the less light it comes in, or basically less artificial light, because it's not as sensitive to light, and that's where you're going to get the cleanest image. So right now it's looking better, but it's really dark. So now I could go ahead and play around with things. I'm going to adjust my f-stop, so I'm going to let more light in. So I'm going to go down to a lower aperture number, or f-stop number, which is a larger aperture, so then it's correctly exposed, and there it is. So I have it at a f-stop of 8.0, shutter speed 60, ISO 200, and that is properly exposed. And that is the beauty of manual mode. I know there is a lot of things in here, and there is way more to it. However, I just want to show you a quick general comparison of auto mode versus manual mode, and some of the key settings that you can use to set your exposure. And there's many other things you could do as well, such as your white balance and a lot of settings to tweak it even more. But setting exposure is something that's going to take time, and there's always many different ways to do it. So if you actually had any thoughts on this, be sure to leave it in the comments area below. And if you did want to see more of my camera tutorials, tips, and thoughts. I do have a playlist. I'll leave in the description area below or up here. For the best value in domain names, check out Namecheap, where you could get a domain for less than $10, plus get privacy protection for free. For more information, check out the affiliate link in the description area below.